voted by all Republicans, okay,
Yeah.
at the convention. Do you know how nice it is for me to be like, hey. You know how nice it was? I got 2 people voted against my resolution for jury nullification, where I quoted Lysander Spooner. That means that in Cobb County, like 298 Republicans voted for an anarchist. Okay, just in my head, I'm George Bush.
So. I love it. I appreciate your patience. I had to turn the dial up.
Different strategies for different
exactly.
people. I might just like it because I'm so used to my family being all socialist that I'm just like, this is my calling. I think it is my calling.
Maybe.
I literally, my brother-in-law says I'd be in a perfect world. Anarchy would be a perfect world. That's what he says now. Okay, he says it's not possible, but that he says anarchy is best. And all the other my siblings and nephews are like, whoa, how did you get there?
It's
and they don't even know an anarchist. That's the weird part because I don't even use that phraseology. He said it by himself. Like it's on record. Just give me like a few years.
What's my time frame?
Your time frame?
When do we unleash anarchist banks?
Oh, never.
What?
Ever.
Never.
I don't need. I'm not even an anarchist. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not a Republican.
What if we get to constitutional government? Do I get to see anarchist banks?
You'll see the same banks. Like all my arguments are anarchist. Nobody just will call me out on it.
I know. I'm kidding.
But I don't even want to call myself an anarchist the same way I don't want to call myself a libertarian. Like I don't even like call myself.
It's just liberty. I just want liberty.
It's just just peace, liberty, and free
Peace.
markets.
Peace, liberty.
I can make all my arguments and be comfortable in front of anybody.
I'll tell you now.
And I've never wanted to call myself anything. I've been consistent my entire life of not wanting to call myself a libertarian or Republican or anything. I literally had tags made when we were involved in the Republican Party, and it said, because we had like these Cobb tags, these Cobb Republican Party tags, and so I made custom ones that were yellow and black, with a little snake on them, and it said, Ron Paul Republican.
Oh wow.
It just like the labels don't matter, man.
No.
They matter so little.
I agree.
But I don't mind people wanting the labels either. Like Joshua Smith is like full on libertarian, and I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
I just for me the labels just don't work. Okay, my friend.
Cool. All right, great.
Welcome to the rebellion.
All right, here we go.
Welcome back to the Rebellion, everybody. My name is Banks Wise. This is your place for peace, liberty, and free markets. Across from me, my wonderful friend and candidate for the U.S. Senate, Shane Hazel.
What's up, Banksy?
I am doing pretty well. This is our Friday episode. We're recording over the weekend. On Monday, we talked about a bunch of timely news, and this time we can go back a little bit into history and follow up on some questions people had for you as a candidate. As we've talked about in, I think it was last week, we went through your website, kind of, scrolled down through all the issues, and you had a way of expressing yourself which is very natural to me, which is kind of a big picture thing, right?
Yeah,
it's about peace, liberty, free markets. This is what that means. And some issues you kind of mentioned, people could grasp your take on it, but there's some issues there that are barely mentioned, even though if you follow the logical conclusion of what peace, liberty, and free markets means, you could get to an answer. Some people want a direct answer from you, Shane. Are you ready to give a direct answer to the people?
I am, man. I don't like to skip around. I mean, a shocker to our long-time audience here. No, if you're just joining us, guys, I don't mince words, right? I'm not into political speak. It is one of those things that I hope people find refreshing. I hope people tune in for that reason. They go, hey, listen, there's a guy running for Senate down in Georgia. He's got a podcast, and he talks about this stuff all the time. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of what I think about most of these things out there. And a lot of it's probably going to be pointing you back in time to some previous episodes in terms of really understanding, unpacking it, and explaining it in ways that involve history.
So before we start with some of the listener questions or just the intrigued people on Facebook, Twitter questions, I have a curiosity of my own. What do you think is one of the most political answers you've ever given?
Oh boy, one of the most political answers I've ever given.
Like, think of maybe your last campaign.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can tell you, with Republicans in Liberty, I had to see what my crowd was, man, and I tell you right now, there's a lot of Republicans out there that are not ready to hear that. I don't know. That the drug war is a lost, disastrous policy that's unconstitutional at the national level, and I think probably at every level, but especially there, because
I don't think you actually shied away from that.
I didn't shy away.
I remember you specifically saying on a debate stage that the war on drugs was a failure.
I think I said it was a failure. I don't think I went as far as to say, hey, listen, the idea that you're going to stop people from obtaining drugs, and peaceful people at that. I don't think peaceful people left. They're adults. I have that. Like I think I kind of softened that up for the Republican ears a little bit out there, and it was probably because I thought that they weren't ready for the entire thing, and that's peaceful people hurting nobody, don't deserve to be looked at differently, prosecuted. What's the word I'm looking for here in terms of how they'll be I don't know, decided, basically it's not discriminated either, profiled. I don't think the quote unquote the justice system has any purview over peaceful people, period.
You know what's an interesting argument that they made me think of there is you're saying, yeah, peaceful people are not going to be stopped by proof of today's reality.
Sure.
Even less is violent people are definitely not going to be stopped. So why would you want to kind of poke at violent people and create a system where they gain value from the fact that they're good at violence?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
It's actually the same system where we've given the government like more ability because we've said, hey, we love this violence that you inflict on people. Now the government has all this power to inflict violence upon everybody.
That's right.
If you create a system where violence is seen as valuable, then with the war on drugs, the people who are good at doing violence, so the gangs and cartels and governments, are going to inflict a lot of pain on people.
Yeah, man.
Because that pain is giving them money.
That's one of the big questions that came in, and it's, well, where are you on weed? Right?
So Shane, where are you on weed?
Well,
and why did you say weed in such a weird?
First of all, I need to probably direct everybody to, let's see.
The dictionary?
You can go to Rebellion Pod on Lisbon. You can go to rebellionpod.com. I think it's probably going to be on the Libsyn site out there. So rebellionpod.libsyn.com is where we host all of our shows. See, I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. The show that I'm probably going back to, let's see, the history of cannabis prohibition, the war on drugs,
34.
And Harry Anslinger, episode 34. I remember specifically doing this episode because I wanted people to understand how terrible and awful and where the history of prohibition of cannabis first and foremost came from. And I'm not going to do that whole show here. I'm going to tell you right now that you need to go and maybe listen to this show and do your own homework and really understand Harry Anslinger, not a doctor, okay, a guy that was in charge of prohibition, I believe, in parts of the Caribbean and things like that, and other parts of the government in the 20s in terms of alcohol prohibition, was the first guy who was in charge of the Bureau of Narcotics. Okay, and so what does a bureaucrat do? A bureaucrat looks to grow his budgets and grow his power, and what he needed after prohibition of alcohol was ended, he needed another boogeyman. And so when you look at Reefer Madness is a product of Harry Anslinger. Harry Anslinger was a racist, terrible, awful guy, right? He's one of the guys that kind of came up with the idea that quote-unquote Negroes and jazz musicians were cavorting, I guess, with white women out there, and that kind of stuff needed to be stopped. I mean, you had people jumping out of windows and committing hit-and-run crime, and it was just, listen, let's be real. You know anybody who smokes cannabis once in a while? They're probably some of the nicest, most peaceful, hungry people you've ever met in your life, right? That's the side effects of cannabis. If you smoke it too early in the day, are you going to be maybe a little more unproductive? You might be. I'm not going to sit there and tell you, cannabis is great for going out and taking over the world. However, I'm also going to tell you there are absolutely zero fatalities in terms of consumption of cannabis. Okay? So it's a safe medicine. It is food for livestock. Here in Georgia, we can grow 2 bumper crops a year. What does that mean?
Bumper crops?
Bumper crops? Bumper crops mean not only did you grow the crop successfully, that you have a surplus. So in one growing season here in Georgia, which, let's be serious, it starts about in March, right? This is what Bloomberg didn't get the other day. When you're starting to get your soil and everything ready here in January and February, you're doing your tilling and you're cultivating, cultipacking, getting that pH just right for planting and ready to go. The idea that we're going to start growing stuff down here in March, that's not going to end most times probably till, October-ish, because of the heat and the humidity that we just naturally have down here. The amount of cannabis that can be grown in Georgia alone could supply the entire world in 1 year with enough biodiesel to run every diesel engine on the planet.
So just for some people who might be confused, it is productive to make the differentiation between cannabis and hemp, and even though they're the same family,
Sure.
they do serve different purposes.
Yeah.
And have different. Hemp specifically, even compared to cannabis, which is already a pretty versatile plant, hemp is very versatile,
huge.
very robust, and is the one that can provide oil. It can provide a alternative to plastic. It can provide fiber.
Sustainable building materials.
Hempcrete.
Hempcrete, you're talking about reinforcement, you're talking about roof. I mean, anything that you can do with oil in plastics, you can do with hemp. And here's the other thing is, hemp's actually biodegradable. And it's naturally an anti-pesticide. So you don't need all the chemicals. You don't need all the chemicals sprayed onto crops. Hemp is just naturally kind of this pungent little plant out there that naturally protects itself. It also gets down into the soil at a different, a molecular level, and starts to do things to that soil like aerate it and release nitrogen and things like that. Whereas other crops out there,
take out
minerals and everything else. You can do this twice a year in Georgia. The fact that we're just supposed to be free people, land of the free, home of the brave. Farmers should be able to grow whatever the hell they want on their property, period. I hope the farming industry hears this. I'm telling you right now, I don't think David Perdue, and I guarantee you that when it comes to socialists, they'll tell you what to grow, right? They're going to tell you exactly when and how and what to grow, and you're going to go by all their silly standards when they don't know your farm.
I wish I could do a Russian accent so I could say, "You shall follow the 5-year plan."
Yeah, right. We're going to grow lemon trees. Right? I mean, something dumb like that. That's the state plan. I don't care what the state plan is. as farmers, you should be able to grow whatever the hell you want to grow on your land to make not only ends meet, but within your belief system. That's the thing is, if we're going to talk about being free, you're going to talk about beliefs. The government doesn't have any purview whatsoever on how you medicate, how you farm, how you trade, how you do any of this kind of stuff. And you want to talk about opening up an economic boom in a time where we could really, really use it. Because let's face it, we talked about it before, everybody's over leveraged right now. You want to look at the student loan debt, you want to look at the automobile debt, you want to look at the housing debt, you want to look at all the debt that's accumulated by middle class, including farmers, middle class, lower class. If you're not, I don't know, probably making at least $150,000 a year, this class needs an economic boom. And freedom in terms of going out and growing cannabis or hemp or whatever it is and taking that to market and creating new industries, economically sound industries, industries that are not taxed and overburdened with government bureaucracy. And I'm talking about,
or subsidized to the point that the price signal
is wrong.
Which would be somebody deciding to do something doesn't make any sense because we've got so much corn that's being that's being produced, for example, which is subsidized. Is that what the market is supposed to get? Is the market supposed to get so much cheap corn to where everything that you see at a supermarket has high fructose corn syrup in it?
Yeah.
I would guess probably not. At the very least, there's a doubt.
Yeah.
You've answered all this in a very broad way, but still more specific than the website. Let me do what I would think would be some specific questions from people who may know you less.
Okay.
So, should somebody be able to use, and I'm going to go in like an ever-increasing amount of liberty, I think.
Oh, let's do it.
So
yes.
Should somebody be able to use cannabis for medical purposes?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Should
Can I elaborate?
Sure.
Yeah. It's your body. I don't care. As long as you are not hurting anybody else, you have a right to whatever self-sustainment you believe in. That means new types of drugs. That means natural types of drugs. I don't care. You're an adult. Choose whatever the hell you want to choose, but you also have to be responsible for what you're choosing. That, I think, is the caveat. If you think you're just going to get blazed up all day long and society's going to pay for you to do such a thing, that's not what I'm advocating, okay? I'm not advocating for your health care. I'm not advocating for anything in terms of that. I'm saying it's your body, and if you think that you need to use a certain type of drug, whether it be natural or man-made, I think you have that right. And I think cannabis is one of those things where we don't have addiction problems. We don't have overdosing problems. You don't have an overdosing case in history, okay? Mm-hmm. So it is safe. It is natural. It's one of those things that if you want to use it, you have the absolute natural right to do so.
Okay, so should somebody be able to get it without a doctor's prescription?
Of course they should. They should be able to, can you get a tomato out of your backyard? Of course, it's a plant. It grows naturally. God put it here. And for all the people who are out there that might be of what I'm going to call Christians, okay? A lot down here in Georgia. A lot of you guys. I think you need to go, I don't know if it's Genesis 34 or 39. Go look it up. God gave us all seed-bearing plants for our use. The idea to me that you can look at this as a Christian and tell people they are forbidden from plants, right? You're forbidden from plants. God had one plant that he forbid, right? We're basically told it was the apple. We made it, we fell. Hey, listen, it's all on you guys now. You're in a fallen world as Christians. Go use the planet in a responsible way, but I'm telling you right now, the things that are here for you that you haven't even discovered yet within this community of, I don't know, botany, right?
Yeah.
That's why people get bent out of shape about cutting down rainforests, because there's so much life there that we haven't uncoded and discovered and made the grounds. Like, listen, I don't think that the rainforest is gone. I don't think that we're deforesting the planet or anything like that. I think there are certain places that have, and I think it's kind of an awful thing. But at the same time, I'm all for finding cures through natural means, and one of those natural means that is glaringly apparent to I think anybody that has spent any time in study is cannabis.
Okay, what is the justification for some things having to be prescribed by a doctor?
Dosing, right? Dosing. If you take too much of, I don't know, let's just say Benadryl, you die. Take too much, I don't know, acetaminophen, you can die. You take too much Advil, you can die.
The things that you just stated are legal to buy over
the
counter.
Some of them, right?
Well, the ones you just stated.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, it's dosing, right? Could you put cannabis in a package and dose it? Of course you can. And you're not going to die from it, even if you eat the whole darn thing. I don't care if it's 99% THC. You're not going to die from it. You might feel like you're dying. You might feel like you're already dead. You might feel like you're connected with everything in the damn universe, and you may even call the cops and tell them you're dying, you got a bad batch of something or another, and they're going to take you to the hospital. They're going to go, well, no, he's got a lot of THC in his system. We're going to turn out the lights and give him a bag of Doritos and say goodnight for a little while. That's what I'm talking about. Dosing is one of the things I think that most people that were like, you got to have a doctor's prescription. You know what? I think there's an industry that pops up that just says, hey, listen, this is how we're going to measure dosing. This is going to be our industry standard. And that's the freedom that industry should have to do those things. And I think in terms of a business wanting to have customers and repeat business, what your objective is to supply your customer with the best product you possibly can so you earn the market share of the business in that market. That's just the way capitalism works.
Okay.
I mean...
No, I appreciate that. I think we can jump to another subject.
Yeah? So, you think so?
Yeah, how does capitalism talk about the border in the mind of Shane Hazel?
Border. I actually had somebody come back, Banksy, and said, "You're too soft on the border for me. Like you're too much of a softie on imaginary lines for me to consider you as a serious candidate."
Okay.
All right. Question is I don't think I've put out my position since even last time I was running, and I don't know that we've talked about it.
I mean,
what I'll tell you is you can't have open borders in a subsidized society. What does that mean? You can't open borders freely for anybody and everybody to come in when you have a society that has handouts. Now, listen, I understand corporations get handouts all the time. I'm not for corporate handouts either. I'm not for any handouts. I'm not for the government being able to come in and take your money at gunpoint and redistribute your life and your property and your money to other people that you don't want it going to. That's first and foremost wrong. So in a society where this is happening, you can't have open borders. Okay? I don't think you should be able to. I can tell you right now, constitutionally, what we're doing in terms of federal immigration is wrong. Immigration was left to the states per the Constitution, and I can almost cite it from memory. I think it's Article 1, Clause 8, or Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. Okay? Naturalization is the process of becoming an American citizen that is federalized for a reason, and that is to make sure that anybody and everybody who will vote in a federal election and has a voice in terms of creating a seat for the House of Representatives, for the Electoral College, you cannot swell the numbers artificially by one state just bringing in a whole bunch of immigrants and saying, you got a right to vote here. It is, you will come in, you will go through a naturalization process and take some tests that puts everybody in this country on the same line in terms of becoming a naturalized citizen. Now, with that being said, I think states, per the Constitution, own immigration as, however they want to run it. They have industry there. The state of Georgia has industry in terms of agricultural or industry, which is our number one industry, where that industry may need people to work. That's not a problem, right? Like if you're...
So you're saying you're in favor of work visas as much as the state wants
I'm not, yes. And I'm not in the H-1B, whatever the ones where you can basically get anybody and everybody you've ever talked to from your former country to come in and live with you. I don't think that's the way to do it. But what I'm saying is, I think if you have 50 states that are in control of their own immigration, not naturalization, immigration, as the framers put forth in the Constitution, I think what you have is 50 different experiments going on at the same time to figure out what are the good things that they're doing and what are the bad things that they're doing. What are they doing that's working? What are they doing that's not working? And then what you start to see is adoption. Adoption of certain practices that actually work. And then obviously, as the market works, disregarding those practices that don't work. That's the thing, is it's okay for states to be different in this realm. The naturalization process is different because now we're talking about actually having a say in this government as foreigners, and that is why they made the naturalization process that way. Now, so controlled borders. Do I think we should go down through eminent domain and start taking land and building a wall, $20 billion worth? I don't. Because I don't think it's going to work. When you look at how people and drugs and anything else that's banned, prohibited by the federal government, which, let me remind you people, there is nowhere in the Constitution of the United States that delegates the power of prohibition to the federal government. I know people are going, oh my God, maybe it's the first time tuning in. Look it up for me. Find it for me. Send it to me. I've never seen it. I've never seen it seen. And I'll tell you right now.
Outside anything that's in the contract, and those are not prohibition. Those are mutual agreements. Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing in terms of a delegated authority. Now, to prove my point, when we went through alcohol prohibition, what did we do? We passed an amendment, and then to repeal that amendment of prohibition, we passed another amendment. Mm-hmm. That never ever happened with weed, okay, or cannabis, or any of that other kind of stuff. It was just fiat legislation where they said, hey, bureaucracy, we're going to come in and we're going to take control of this kind of stuff, and let people let them because fear. Now, to get back to the states and immigration and naturalization, I think when you start to actually implement constitutional government, this situation gets far better. Do I think our immigration system is sustainable in this country? I don't. I think it's absolutely broken in a million different ways, and you know why? It's because government's involved. You've got messed up signals out there in the market. You've got just a perversion of industry in this country, and you've got an out of control bureaucratic nightmare that's accountable to nobody, that isn't doing a damn thing about this for a lot of reasons, and a lot of them are special interests.
So question, when
Sure.
we talk about the federal government, since you're running for the federal government, what would be any appropriate, if there are any, measures that the federal government would take upon the states when it comes to immigration and the movement of people?
Well, they don't have they don't have the delegated authority to do any of it.
They wouldn't have the delegated authority if the states let somebody vote in their elections?
So no, and that's the thing is, if a state wants to change the way and who is allowed to vote, that's in the state. A state is a state. It's a country in and of itself in terms of the local and state elections within that state.
I thought the Constitution said that you had to have a Republican form of government.
Yeah, that's...
Wouldn't the Republican form of government be tied into the federal Republican form of government?
No.
And if those two weren't in sync, there'd be a problem?
Article 4, Section 4, I believe. But no, that's the repel invasion. Article 4, Section 3, maybe is what it is. The Republican form of government guaranteed by the Constitution, you can still have a Republican form of government, but if you allow anybody and everybody in your state to vote as a citizen of a state, just because you're a citizen of a state doesn't mean you're a citizen of the federal government, right?
Yes, but the politicians of the state, right? So the governor and so forth form the federal government because they are the representatives who formed the Constitution.
You're saying the states themselves.
Yeah, I actually didn't mean to lob you like a contentious.
Contentious?
Contentious, thank
Sure.
you. Contentious question.
Oh, let's go.
I'm just saying that if the people who formed the federal government were the states, and the representatives of the states are the state reps who used to vote for the U.S. senators,
sure,
by the way, and the governor, so the politicians of each state, then their representatives today, so the current state representatives, state
but there's a separation.
And government are also part of this contract, and the contract that part of who created the contract doesn't seem like it should be able to change if part of the agreement is this is how we're going to organize the government.
So I see it as you can still have a Republican form of government even with immigrants that aren't naturalized citizens of the federal government. If you want to, as a state, being a country in and of yourself, if you want to welcome people in and make them citizens of your state, that's completely that's completely up to a state.
That seems like it would be a loophole to have non-naturalized citizens change the system.
What have we said before? It means that they still can't vote in a federal election, right? They can vote in a state and local election. They cannot vote in a federal election. They're different.
But they would be able to choose representatives who would then within the state, who would then have the power to try to
at the state level.
Yeah, but the states are part of the contract. So if they can change one of the entities that has the most power, right, the creator of the system, then they can influence the system, and that takes away from the system being the same all over, which naturalization is.
Well, it's not supposed to be the same, right? Like there's a few.
No, it's not supposed to be the same, except when it comes to the Republican form of government, which now there's a loophole to change it.
No, so I don't see it that way, because here's the thing: war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce. Those are those are the federal delegated authorities. Within those federally delegated authorities, the states are actually excluded from those authorities. So war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce cannot be carried out by a state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in those things, if you are a state with a governor and an electoral legislative branch,
mm-hmm.
and you have people who are members of that state but not members of the federal government, okay, they can still decide who their legislatures are and who the governor is. Now that, I don't know, as a people in a state, do you want to do that? I don't know if you do or not. Now, at the other end of it, you're still not getting into the war, you're not getting into peace, negotiations, foreign commerce, any of that kind of thing. That is a sustainable system. That system, in terms of being part of a contract, which obviously is flawed. We've talked about
sure,
the Constitution.
I have no problem saying it's flawed, but under the premise of what the contract says, I think that would be a breach of the contract. Because it takes away from the uniformity that was agreed upon in how the government works.
I just don't see how it takes away from that uniformity.
This would be my last argument about it, because at some point, if we just don't agree, that's
that's that.
But if the powers that are that allow the Constitution to exist, right? It's kind of laid out.
It's an agreement. It's a contract.
It's laid out in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that the powers are derived from a certain entity, and the entity are the people, right?
States. Yeah. No, it's the states.
No. The Constitution specifically says that these rights are reserved to the states or the people, and the people is the last one, which means that that's where they get their power. That is also how a Republican form of government works.
So rights are only reserved to people. States don't have rights. States have other delegated authorities.
Sure, but that's what it says in the Constitution, so I'm not going to change the words right at this point.
So the state, in terms of carrying out Republican forms of government, if a state decides that they want to conduct business a certain way with different ways of making people in their state legal citizens of their state, not of the federal government,
mm-hmm.
I don't think that changes a damn thing.
I think it changes, on top of my previous argument, I think it changes because the current system, the current Republican form of government is construed and was established under the basis that it's the people who empower these different levels of governance to exist and exercise a Republican form of government. And so if you let the concerned people be changed in an ununiform way, I think it's not a Republican form of government anymore.
I just don't see how they do that without
this doesn't apply to every other part of life, specifically the 9th and 10th Amendment, who say this is all the other stuff is reserved. This is one of the very few things that is reserved to the contract, meaning to the government.
Yeah, I just don't see it as changing the Republican form of government. I think you can still have a Republican form of government and different naturalization within the state, not naturalization at the federal level.
If you're saying just in regards to residency and being allowed to work, and for me those two go tandem because being allowed to work shouldn't be anybody's purview.
You have a right to work.
If you're just talking about that, yes, but since it goes into the electoral system, which is bottom up per the principle of the Constitution in the first place of where the power comes from, is vested in the people to start with. I think that
so if the people decide they want people from not their country to become naturalized citizens within their state, shouldn't they have that right? Because it is not specifically delegated to the federal government, so they reserve the power per the 9th and 10th Amendment.
Specifically delegated to the government is to guarantee a Republican form of government. So
they can still have it.
I think that would be a breach of contract.
Oh well, we're going to disagree on that because
cool.
you can still have a Republican form of government.
I think at the very least it would be problematic because.
Well, they still have to go through an amendment process, which is an Article 5 process. So it's either 2/3.
Who would have to go through an amendment
anybody
process?
that wants to change the Constitution. Anybody that wants to change the contract has to go through an Article 5 amendment process to change it.
So not confused. Are you saying that the state would be allowed to do it on their own with their laws and constitution, or that to do that they would have to offer an amendment?
To change anything at the national level.
Okay.
To change the War Peace Negotiation for to change the national contract, which is the Constitution.
But you're arguing that them allowing there to be U.S. Georgia citizens, for example, would not affect any part of the Constitution.
You can't.
Okay.
By the Constitution, you cannot change the Constitution unless you go through an Article 5 amendment.
No, but the reason we're having a contentious argument is because you're saying that Georgia potentially allowing whoever to become a Georgia naturalized citizen would not have anything to do with the Constitution, that they'd be allowed to do that.
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we just did disagree on that. It's funny though that we stumbled upon this disagreement about a subject we've never had because I'd never heard that idea.
I think it's a great debate, man.
I think citizenship, for the most part, is somewhat overrated, anyways.
I'll tell you right now,
this is the person that has 3 passports.
If I can opt out of paying taxes to this bureaucracy, man, opt out in a damn heartbeat.
We need to do an episode one day, and then I'll go to the other question you've gotten. We need to do an episode one day on these micronations that have popped up. Because a lot of their arguments are that they just want to opt out of the system.
Yeah, no thanks, guys.
There's a few. There's one that's on this little island, I think between like France and
I've seen that
Britain.
One. Yeah.
And there's one which is it's like a decades and decades old story. It's in like no man's land, Australia, and this guy goes through these episodes of the government coming back and being like, you have to do this, and him saying no.
Yeah.
And as soon as he starts like negotiating with them, they fall into this trap of, oh, you're treating me like another country because you're negotiating with them, and so they stop, and he like establishes his own passport, and
I've seen that here in the States too.
And then as soon as he starts to say, well, okay, like I'll let people pass through here who are Australian too, and make agreements, they start to like lay off him. And then as soon as he starts pushing to be like more like a country, they like come back and like it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean you see abuses like that inside the United States even more so now. Like there's the government that's trying to overrun Amish land. There are obviously deep involvement by the federal government into Indian territories here in the United States. I mean, and there are guys that have just gone out and bought some piece of land and said, hey, listen, I'm planting a flag here and becoming my own nation.
It's funny how the premise of, oh, we made a mistake, we have to give some land back to the Indians, has actually turned around to be areas which are much more harshly regulated in lots of ways. In some ways, they're just giving all that authority to the controlling faction of that Indian reserve, who can be much more tyrannical than the federal government because, well, nobody's paying attention. Because I don't think I've ever been on an Indian reserve, but I hear like horror stories.
Yeah,
it's actually, it might be double plus bad. 1984 reference.
Yeah, there you go.
But because not only do they give like free reign to whoever is taking control over this reservation, but on top of that, they're subsidizing it too. So it's like here's destroying your economy, and here's giving authoritarian power.
That's right.
Like have fun with that.
Yeah, textbook.
Anyways,
the American bureaucracy.
That was a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I do.
Oh, it's good. And let's caveat this whole thing with immigration is really, really, really messed up in America, right? Like it's just good, bad, indifferent. Like there is so many problems with what's going on in terms of border patrol. Because I'll tell you, one of the I got to hit on this before we move on. I put out a tweet a couple weeks or maybe a week ago. One of the biggest pieces of BS out there is the 100-mile area along all of our borders here in the U.S. that is a constitutional free zone.
So you're not talking about 100 miles, you're probably talking like 100?
100 100 miles.
Oh, you're meaning from the seashore to inland.
Whatever border there is in terms of, 100-mile constitutional free zone. You want to talk about one of the most overlooked, unconstitutional, just despotic pieces of legislation.
Have you seen the videos where people are stopped by border control, like way in, and of course they don't make the argument, hey, this is a constitution free zone, but you'll have some people who make the argument, hey, like I don't need to consent to a search and seizure and inspection here, and like, oh no, that doesn't apply here.
I actually have a video of me going through one of these out by Yuma, and
Yuma is in Nevada.
Yeah, Yuma, Arizona. So I'm out in Yuma, and I'm pulling in, and I've been there and I've done it, and like when I was young and I was in the Marine Corps going in and out of these things, I never even thought about it, right? I thought, oh yeah, Border Patrol, great, well, 100 miles inside of the border, right? On American roads, paid for with our American money. You have the right to travel in the U.S. The Supreme Court has upheld that opinion. Okay, you have the right to travel. That's why we are a confederation or a federal government, because there's some type of reciprocity in terms of crossing borders where you don't need a damn passport to do so. Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward out into the middle of the desert here in 20 whatever it was when I had this encounter with Border Patrol. Mm-hmm. I had my rental car, and I rolled up, cracked my window, and this guy starts to approach the car and says, "You American citizen?" I said, "Can I go?" And he goes, "Excuse me?" And I said, "I'd like to be on my way. This is America. I haven't crossed any borders. I'd like to be free to leave and go along my way." He says, "Well, we need to determine your citizenship." I haven't crossed any borders. I'm telling you right now, I haven't crossed any borders. Can I be on my way? This is an absolute violation of the Fourth Amendment. What's the Fourth Amendment? The right to be secure in your person, property, and effects. I'm on American soil. Why am I being asked by a government agent to prove one way or another my citizenship?
I think it's because the Nazis gave him an idea.
And secondly, how do you prove through voice transition that...
No, you can't. They're asking you for your papers, Shane.
No, no, but if you just say yes, you can go. If you just submit and say, yes, I'm an American citizen, you can be on your way and be free. What is it for? It's for anybody that maybe doesn't look the part of being an American, right? Or drugs.
This is how wonderful private property is. There's a friend that I go visit, and he lives in a gated community.
Yeah.
And so when I go there, I have to go into the visitor line, and somebody opens a little window, like half door window thing, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I say, "Well, I'm going to visit my friend, and he lives here." And they're like, "So are you here to work?" Or I'm like, "Just to have fun." They're like, "How long?" I'm like, "All day." Yeah. Inside my mind, my desire is to say, "None of your freaking business. Leave me be."
Yeah.
But I don't get to decide that because there's a bunch of private property, and the people who are on that property have decided that they like this system, which sucks. And I can be frustrated at it, but at the very least, it's not being paid for by me. It's not imposed by me on anywhere that I'm allowed to be intrinsically, which would only be my property or public places.
Right.
It's just imposed there, and so I don't have to be frustrated about it. But when we have this system where we're all like, kumbaya, we all own this together, it's all our government, and somebody does the same thing to me, I'm going to have a bit of a problem with it.
If everybody owns
especially when I know that there's a differentiation between those two systems.
Yeah.
One which might be annoying, like I hate HOAs, I don't like gated communities unless they're my freaking gate. When you know that there's systems that work better, and you're confronted with the contrast all the freaking time, it's going to be annoying. On top of the fact that it's wrong, I think that if that ever happens to me, I hope I remember this. I want, as the person approaches, and I keep on saying, I'm gonna go. We good, right? And they keep on like.
Am I being detained?
They keep on coming close. I'm gonna be like, you're approaching the border of comfortability of Banks Wise.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to show some very good justification papers for getting so close to me.
I'm telling you right now, man, America, you need to wake up. This 100-mile border nonsense here in constitutional free land, I'll tell you right now, when I stepped onto the yellow footprints at Paris Island and became a Marine and told I was charged with defending the United States Constitution with and up to my life. That was not part of the damn deal. There was no free speech zones. There was no, impediments upon my inalienable God-given rights that are codified by the Constitution. And so, I don't know, between me and this guy, I was very flippant and angry and aggressive with him as a Border Patrol guy. And I kind of looked the part, of like, hey, jackass, I know you guys because I used to be kind of one of you guys,
yeah,
right?
You kind of look like a cop.
Yeah, you kind of, because you look like a cop. You look like a grown man. Name that movie. But at any rate.
No idea.
Yeah, so I said, I'm not answering your questions. I said, and the fact that you're just trying to determine my citizenship. I said, that dog, can he smell U.S. on me or what? And at that point, he starts to go, maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. And so the dog finishes his sniff lap, and he's like, you're free to go. And that was it.
The problem with that, and I equate it to, this is the same kind of problem when you encounter authority, is that different people in that same situation have a very hard time.
Oh, you're damn right.
What if more of the melanin from my Hispanic side of the family had been my name, and my middle name wasn't Banks, and my first name was Fernando?
Yeah. What if I would have rolled up and said, hola, como esta, man?
How many American citizens, I'm talking about the naturalized ones, do you know who speak with an accent, look very different from what your TV-esque American is, which is like a white dude like us? Like, how many of those I know tons of them. I know probably half the people I know who are American don't look like what we're told Americans look like, which
I see this all the time with American quote-unquote law enforcement. Hey there, show me your papers. Where are you from? Where are you going? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's just not with a German accent. Where are you going? Where are your papers? Let me see. And I'm telling you right now, they lock your ass up, and then you go to jail. If you don't fit the profile of somebody probably more like myself, right? Big, white, ugly, mean as hell, who's been there and done it and got the t-shirt, who does not put up with that crap. I'll tell you right now, your chances of being placed in handcuffs, tased, shot, put in a cage, go up tremendously.
It's just, and it doesn't just happen with what you look like. It also happens with like who you are.
Yeah.
Like there's people who, I don't know, I have a buddy and he always likes to be in a buttoned up shirt. And I have friends and really all other swaths of life, right? Rich, poor, young, old, but just look different. I've been stopped by law enforcement once when I was sleeping in my car. Long story, I'll tell another day. But the fact that my car was kind of median, like averagely nice and not like beat up, and the fact that I happened to be in a button-up shirt, and the fact that I happened to be somewhat articulate, and since I'm a policy analyst, like I know how to speak some of the language when I'm talking about the Constitution, not just like
it's my right.
Even think to mention the Constitution.
Yeah.
Put me in a much safer position than if other friends I have other friends who have beat up cars who make much more money than me.
Yeah.
But if they were in a beat up car and were wearing like raggedy clothes, it'd be a whole different subject. And even for me, looking pretty upstanding that day, luckily for me, I was still treated like crap.
And this is why a proficiency in government schooling for rights and understanding of the Constitution and things of that matter will never be taught correctly or to a proficiency where people can do this and defend themselves, because government wants to be able to take advantage of you, and the prison industrial complex, the associations that are out there for law enforcement, and everybody else who lobbies Congress at every level, every state, at the federal level, you name it, the alcohol industry, anybody and everybody from pharmaceutical, all these different lobbies that are out there, they want to make sure that at the end of the day, they have people coming in through their system, so they are making money. And that's the problem with this entire damn quote-unquote justice system.
So the motto of Brazil is Ordem and Progresso, which means order and progress.
Yeah.
And because of that, it helps me understand that some people see order in a much more positive light than me, and some kind of equate it to tranquility, maybe even peace. And so the government, I don't see something necessarily intrinsically wrong with that. I like order too. Like, I like it when my house is orderly, and when my house is not orderly, which happens all the time, I get anxiety from it, right?
Sure.
And so the government kind of wants the same thing that we want, which is some kind of order/peace.
Yeah.
It's that the problem is that the truths that we're taught are in direct opposition to intrinsic truth. And so what happens is people, whatever level of education they have, whatever their background is, they can feel that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might not even know what they're feeling, but they go and get in positions where they're confronted by authority, and they know what they're supposed to do, right? They're just supposed to, like, yes sir, I'll do whatever you want, sir.
Don't send me to jail, sir. Don't put me in a cage, sir.
Your boot feels really good on my neck.
It's gross.
My neck was cold. I appreciate the warmth of your boot. If you could stop drooling right there, though, if you could drool like more like right here, I might need some hydration. You might be right. I know I made it weird, but
you're exactly right,
it's in direct conflict. And so when natural tendencies of human beings, which is to want peace, actual peace, right, go in conflict with that, and they don't want to say yes, sir, and or they don't want to have to explain their day. The same reaction I have when the private property gate guy says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I just want to say, "None of your business." The thing is that even if I say none of your business to that private individual, right?
Yeah.
What are the consequences? Maybe he doesn't let me in. He tells me to go away. What happens when natural occurrences in a government situation? Somebody pushes back, and I tell a cop, "None of your business."
Oh boy, it escalates automatically these days. Everything escalates. That is the wrong response from quote-unquote law enforcement. De-escalation. For God's sakes, they teach it to Marines. And they're not teaching it here in America. Go figure. It's not because it's an accident, man. It's, you don't know your rights, you're not proficient in your rights, you're not proficient in the Constitution, I get so worked up about this subject in particular.
So the problem is, correct de-escalation is supposed to be like an acknowledgement of the right things, right? And the thing is, if they follow through with correct de-escalation, they're going to come to the conclusion that maybe they asked the wrong question.
Well,
maybe when I come back to the airport and have my little passport thingy official, like I'm allowed to be here thing, and they ask me what I was doing around there, maybe the problem is on them asking me what I was doing, because maybe it's none of their
It's none of their business. And that's the thing is, that is the first step in escalation. And people don't even, most Americans don't recognize it.
What's the first step?
Somebody in law
to create like an impossible situation.
Law enforcement should never, ever, ever be contacting you about your daily, hourly, right now business.
Without
in terms of an investigation, without some sort of real cause, like.
But we have systems that are designed to do this.
We have too many laws.
It's not just that we have people who are individually choosing to go and start.
Right.
SHIT. Like, we have systems where that is the process. Am I allowed to just spell it out? Is that different?
No, it's not.
But this is how frustrating. These are one of the things that probably some people just deal with. Because there's like this. The systems in our lives are designed that when we go through airports, we're asked to do this. It's not even individual.
This kind of stuff doesn't fly in an educated populace. In a populace that understands liberty and understands inalienable rights. This kind of crap doesn't fly because the mob that is America would never, ever, ever sit by and just take out a video camera and record some person with a tiny little tin badge on taking the rights of somebody else who doesn't. And they would be all over them. They would sit there and say,
"Here's one of the side problems." Then, if it means that. Fortunately, to some degree, but within the system, unfortunately, people with more means are less faced with these problems, right?
Yeah.
And people with less means are more faced with these problems, and that creates a situation where the Bernie Sanders of the world and the SJWs of the world can tap into something where they're not pointing to the right problem, which is everybody's concerned. Unfortunately, though, we're concerned with different things.
Well, and that's the thing is, it's not that it's not that they've misidentified a problem, right? Systematically,
they've misidentified it. I think the
solution is wrong.
I think they've misidentified both. I think they're pointing at the right thing, but they're still misidentifying it.
Oh yeah, agreed.
I don't mean that to sound like
you're not wrong.
Too detailed.
You're not wrong. And what that is we've got a problem. We have a problem. The problem is people who don't have resources, poor, right? That affects any and everybody, regardless of sex, nationality, what your skin color is, who you love, all these little nuances that make us individuals. Poor people are poor people. There are poor people from every walk of life. Period. There are all struggles, and so to sit there and try to push it into just a brown category or just an inner city problem or any of that kind of stuff, like that's where the misidentification comes from that you're talking about, and then obviously diagnosing and finding a solution to that is going to be wrong as well. When in fact it should just be leave peaceful people the hell alone. That's it. Don't escalate. Don't go talk to them. Don't start trying to get into their business. And geez, Pete, when I see this happen and I see the escalation when people are like, who the hell are you? What are you doing? I don't want to talk to you. I'm not doing anything wrong. You have no reason to suspect me of anything. What you're doing is you're fishing. You're fishing to find one of the...
Or they're just applying what they've been told to apply, right?
You're fishing to find some ridiculous, obscure, nonsensical law that you can either extract wealth from me through the judicial system, or you're looking for a quota. Either way, it's un-American. It is absolutely anti-liberty.
I don't think it's even just that. I think that there are these systems, and some of them are just natural oppositions to what a free world is, especially when you come to like business regulation.
Sure.
You've got somebody who comes to a restaurant or a store to do whatever, like verification and give them a grade or whatever stupidity, and you've got a free person. Like capitalism pushes people to produce things,
sure.
right? Who's just trying to produce, and this other person who's coming to say you need to put a piece of plastic on your wall that says whatever stupid rights that have been codified in federal law.
Yeah.
Like that's where I think there's the most pushback, and I think that actually gets a little bit more respect from certain walks of life, and the ones that get where there's a different respect is the ones where unfortunately certain categories of people are more confronted with the ones that are kind of random, kind of the easiest ones to put off unless your brain is like mine and just has a problem with authority.
I definitely agree with you. There's something that, pulling this border thing and rights and escalation and everything together here. There is one thing before I move off of this subject. Meredith ended up picking up the stuff from Gate City Brewery down here, and
I saw that.
Yeah, man, it's called Freedom Fighter Indian Pale Ale. I don't even think she realized, I like beer, I like IPAs and all that fun stuff. And so she picked this thing up. Obviously, Freedom Fighter. She lives with me.
It's got like a red.
It's got a red X on it, right? And so probably the first thing that you should understand is the Stop Human Trafficking sign. So I took a picture. I made a post about it the other day, or I guess last night, or well, now it's been a week. But at any rate. Boy, I tell you what, doing time travel on this show is sometimes difficult, like time travel is. At any rate.
If somebody could clip that little part out of it, of Shane saying, doing time travel on this show is kind of difficult, as time travel is, in such a normal fashion, I would really appreciate it.
That's where my brain is. But here's the thing is, these guys have actually put out something in terms of a movement, right? It's a helpline. They put some statistics on the back of this can of beer that is to help stop human trafficking. And I find this really interesting because they put statistics on the back of this can, Banks. And when you read, and I know statistics and lies and all that shit, God, man, I did it again. 58 minutes. I should write that down.
He's quoting Thomas Dorn.
Yeah.
Mark Twain.
Yeah, Mark Twain. So there are over 141 counties in Georgia where every year trafficking is reported. Okay,
so that's out of 159. That's most of them.
That's most of them. The average age of a
I'm gonna
person.
guess.
Man,
it's really low. I have a feeling.
14.
Good lord. That means the average age. That means there's tons that are younger.
There's younger. There's older. I mean, the average age is 14, and one of the most terrible things that there is over. I think it's 100 people who are trafficked in Georgia every day.
Do we know what they mean
Have
by
you guys
traffic?
ever-
What the definition is?
All of traffic.
Yeah.
Basically moved, sold, like whatever it is to take a person that is used as a slave, basically, for just the most god awful, heinous purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the average age to be 14 years old, and for this to be happening at a rate of 100 people a day in Georgia, nobody from the establishment is talking about this. Nobody from the propaganda machines. I say nobody. The overwhelming majority of the really powerful, really loud voices out there. The fact that we have people being locked up for peaceful crime all over the place. When we have this kind of problem in Georgia, this misallocation of resources in law enforcement, and we're talking about serious crime, murder, rape, coercion, assault, kidnapping. Those 5, which human trafficking encompasses every damn one of them, and it's 14-year-old kids as an average. What the hell are we doing?
So no,
We need sanity,
definitely
man.
agree.
We need sanity, and that's the problem. This government, it's such a bald-faced lie. Why on earth are you going out there and fantasy criming people to death, putting them in cage, locking them up, taking and ripping parts of families away, and destroying communities when we actually have real problems going on? I have no idea.
So the part that makes that worse, not that we need to make it worse, is that a lot of the things that the government does makes this situation more difficult. You don't have infrastructures that are so powerful. Again, this is to my point that I made a while back. You don't have infrastructures that are so powerful when you when you allow them to create so much value based on illegal stuff. All these people who traffic are not just trafficking, where it might be easier to focus on if that's the only thing they were doing. They're also in the drug industry and so forth.
That's right.
The illegal drug industry, which the illegal part is what gives them so much power and money.
Yeah.
I have to, and you put me in this position all the time.
I don't. You choose. This, you're a free man over there.
A free man with a conscience. No, so there are a lot of people, even those in high levels of power, who talk about the problem of human trafficking. The issue there is twofold.
Yeah.
One fold is the inability or unwillingness to acknowledge the things the government does to make it worse.
Yep.
The potentially even more annoying because they get protection from it. Because you'll have, Trump's talked about this, David Perdue's talked about this, Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp has it every week in his weekly update thing. Is that the actions they take to try to fix this is not the actions they should. It's not, okay, we should stop prosecuting fantasy crimes and maybe focus our attention on this. Not only is it not that, it's also the fact that they pass bills that are like, we're going to start taxing strip clubs, or whatever they called it, adult entertainment facilities, which includes, I think, sex shops too. $5,000 a year, and we're going to put this so that we can have more hotline numbers out there. It's like, okay, that might be somewhat good, even though I think that a private institution would do it better. And like, I might not be a fan of all these things you're taxing, but that's not actually the issue. And yet, every year at the Georgia Capitol, and it's the same at the U.S. Capitol, it's the same as in most capitals. There might be some cities where there's less of this happening, or some states, and maybe it's not a big an issue. But they have the thing where they all put like a red cross or a red X on their on their hand, and they take a picture and so forth. So I would contend that most of those people care deeply, but the way that they're addressing things by thinking that just taxing certain institutions is going to change anything, and not actually talking about a change of where we put resources. Yeah, that's I wonder how many people, if we polled, would realize that they're doing such a bad job of where they're wanting to focus resources.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't need to say any more on it. I'm blown away, at the lack of understanding in a solution, and that to me, in terms of, just being in too many people's damn business most of the time, when this requires real attention.
You know what would be cool to do is get like a movement, like a Facebook page, maybe some like a logo that people would recognize,
Yeah.
and when people themselves or see other people getting law enforcement attention, I'll call it.
Yeah.
Just law enforcement attention that seems significantly, I don't even want to go towards a gray line, but significantly less important than going and finding human trafficking.
Yeah.
There should be like some bullet points. Hey, as long as there's 100 people a day in Georgia with an average age of 14 who are being human trafficked, and this includes the vast majority of the time these 5 very heinous crimes of what you said: assault, kidnapping, rape, murder, and coercion. How about you don't stop me for speeding unless I'm actually racing? Maybe, okay? And I know some people might hear that and be weirded out. I'm just saying, maybe some racing, I want to make, it'd be cool if this was easy for anybody to adopt. It'd be like, if I'm not speeding that fast, if I'm in my house putting things to my body that's none of your business.
Here's the thing is,
leave me alone and go do that other stuff.
What I've asked you to do is go look into murder, assault, kidnapping, coercion, and rape. If I'm not doing any of those things, I'm not your guy. Period. I don't care if you're on a road. I don't care if you're on a sidewalk. I don't care if you're in your house.
There's so many numbers. So the thing I don't want, and I'm just spitballing this, the thing I don't want is for people to be able to go into the crevices of our idea and dismantle it. So instead of applying the principle, which people do a very bad job of taking principles in and applying them consistently, they're much better with examples. And so I think it would sell better if people are like, hey, if I'm speeding or ingesting something that's none of your business, or
walking down the street,
or jaywalking, just give easy examples. I'm going to tell cops to go focus on human trafficking. I think that's easier for people to go into instead of a broad thing where they're scared to go into it because they don't understand how to apply principles, and it gives easy ammunition to the other side to be like, well, you didn't think about theft, or you didn't think about I don't know, tax evasion, or whatever stupid stuff they come up with, right?
Yeah.
But I think that would be cool. Like people filming themselves telling this to law enforcement, be like, I just got stopped for rolling through a stop sign when there's only, like, I don't understand why there's stop signs where there's only 3 roads and not 4. There should be yield signs. Okay. or maybe just one stop sign on the one that's coming in perpendicular to the other road.
Yeah. And
the other ones have yield sign. Like, no, you actually don't need yield signs. You only need one stop sign, not like a 3-way stop. 3-way stops are stupid. Okay? Stupid 3-way stops. I want you guys to film yourselves telling cops to stop bothering you at 3-way stops.
Yeah.
I said stop a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to bring that to people's attention in terms of this entire thing. Isn't that the thing? It's all interconnected, man. It's all liberty.
But that's why you have to talk about it, because of what I just said. That people are very bad at applying broad ideas consistently.
Yeah. Let's do it.
You and I are just experts at it.
Yeah, we're pretty good. A couple hundred hours on this, and God knows how many hundreds of hours off air, for God's sake.
So I do have one other issue. So these, for people who didn't get the concept, these are things that people
Have
are
asked.
asking Matt.
Asking
Asking
boy.
Shane.
Jeez, don't tell Cliff.
Asking Shane on Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, because they wanted a little bit more clarity on where he stands. The last one is abortion.
Oh boy, we haven't done an abortion show yet. We've got 20 minutes. We can do abortion in 20 minutes.
You can probably perform an abortion in 20 minutes.
Oh, that is.
Am I allowed to joke about abortion?
Boy, I don't think so.
I'm allowed to joke about whatever they want.
Are you a comedian?
About whatever.
Bex is a comedian today.
Do I have my comedian license?
Oh,
yeah,
man.
it's
listen
here.
Yeah, all right. So back in 2018, I was the only guy that was endorsed by Georgia Right to Life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to tell you guys. Listen, I'm pro baby. I don't care if it's in utero or or born. I don't make any distinguishment. I believe that life begins at conception.
What if it's in like a different country?
Still life begins at conception. Right?
But I mean, what if it's in Iran?
Still life. Yep, still life. If it's on Mars, it's life. If it's on Jupiter or some other planet we haven't even discovered yet, and we find a zygote or a baby of whatever sort, it's life. NASA's going to define it as life.
That's a pretty radical consistency there, my friend.
I'm trying to kind of walk that path in my life. So I think life begins at conception. Now, let's talk about government's involvement in the abhorrent, absolutely just disgusting act of abortion, or what I like to call infanticide. Okay? Infanticide is the systematic murder of babies, period. Okay? And has government, is the question, this is my question, and this is how I think a lot of times. I ask myself questions, and I ask other people questions. Is government and has government been involved in this practice at all? The answer is yes, right? Roe v. Wade.
When, Shane?
Well, Roe v. Wade, about
Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, Roe v. Wade, 1974,
I want to say?
Yeah, so about the same time as the awful Bretton Woods and unpegging from the gold standard, Nixon and Johnson and all those jackasses back then too. Big breath. Government has actually helped fund every year Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, along with other abortion clinics and services and everything else out there, is responsible for about 70 million killings
since Roe v. Wade.
But
Shane, we have things. I believe one of them is called the Hyde Amendment that makes it illegal for the federal government to fund abortions. What are you talking about?
Well, let's see. So I think the last time I really looked at the numbers, it was $70 million. It was at 70 million.
It's 500 million.
Oh wow, I was way off. 500 million.
You're thinking of 70 billion for the Department of Education.
Education, abortion. Man, yeah. Sorry.
Government education, just abortion of minds, kind of.
500 million, $500 million that was extracted by gunpoint from the American people, and then repurposed and given to Planned Parenthood.
But not to fund abortions.
Now,
you have the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah, the Hyde Amendment.
Conservatives voted for the Hyde Amendment.
The Hyde Amendment says that you can't use this money to perform abortions. Now, boy, I know we don't teach economics, and we don't teach anything like household checking and balances of checkbooks and savings and things in terms of allocation of funding. If you go to your bank account, most likely, especially online, you can figure out where you're spending money, right?
Right.
Now, if you need some money to keep the lights on, to run the lights, the water, the whole brick and mortar operation minus the actual killing of the baby, that's $70 million.
500 million.
I'm sorry, I did it again. 500.
No, it's not rational numbers, so it's not unnatural to be weirded out by them.
$500 million to pay for the brick and mortar, and the electricity, and the water, and all other services provided, minus the actual sucking out of the baby, chopping it up, and killing it.
So to put it in terms that people could understand, you're saying that it would be kind of hard maybe to make a pizza in the oven if you didn't have maybe like a roof and electricity and the oven.
Yeah, amazing. It
seems pretty understandable to me.
We'll just put the $500 million into all of our infrastructure, and then we'll allow, I don't know, insurance and people who want to support through donations, Planned Parenthood, things like that. The other thing is who else does it support? Politicians. Overwhelmingly, that 500 part of that 500 million, I think it's 20 million. Mm-hmm. That's $20 million is given to Democrats. Okay, now if we look at where Planned Parenthood came from, that's Margaret Sanger. That's eugenics. That's the progressives of the early 1900s.
Eugenics targeting what kind of people, Shane?
Oh boy, the poor, the downtrodden, the darker skinned people of urban areas.
Margaret Sanger specifically said this was a good method to get rid of. I mean, I'm not mincing words. Like she didn't mince words. Like this was her goal.
The Negroes, right? That's a problem. First and foremost, you have a eugenicist who's trying to get rid of the undesirables in society. That's subjective. That's some Nazi crap.
Well,
man.
I mean, subjectively, I'm still going to have an opinion about it. It's disgusting.
No. I'm saying is who's an undesirable? I'll tell you right now, I don't look at people that way.
In terms of human beings, yeah, nobody.
We've said it a million times. I believe in the individual's genius. I believe in an individual's passion. And I believe in their ability to utilize those to be prosperous in this world so that they may lift the human condition. That is regardless of sex. That is regardless of who you love, who you worship, anything that's an outside. I believe every individual has that right. Now, let's go back and understand. My main point here is that government is not the solution to abortion. If anything, they are the problem. That is going to be very hard for a lot of people to hear. But let's look at the facts, guys. 70 million babies. A lot of them who've been killed by Planned Parenthood, who have been funded for the brick and mortar operation, everything up into including the electricity that runs the vacuum that sucks the baby out of the womb and kills it. It's provided by the taxpayer.
Partially private, a taxpayer. I hate having to do that, but they also raise funds voluntarily.
So, what I'm saying is, government, like most things, is not the answer. It's the problem.
So, I have a lot of friends who are of the same opinion as
Sure.
us, because I share your opinion there. That line about the vacuum is like, it makes my stomach like churn.
It should.
It came from the Georgia Right to Life website. I believe Ricardo wrote that.
Yeah.
And I think as much as it's like painful to think about, I think that's the only way one should talk about it, especially with so many Republican legislators voting for these bills that fund this kind of operation, and for whatever horrible reason, mainly apathy, get a pass on it and get to say that they're pro-life because they voted for the Hyde Amendment, which does nothing to stop that.
Crap.
But I've got a lot of people who have the same opinion, and there will be progressive individuals will come back to them and say, hey, I thought you were like a libertarian-leaning Republican, or I thought you were a libertarian, or I thought you believed in self-ownership. How can you say that? You're a freaking hypocrite because you actually don't believe that a woman owns herself.
Well, here's the thing is, I look at this from a standpoint of being a human being, right? You're young, once upon a time, maybe you had some scares, right? Not ready for a kid. Like, I think most people have probably been in that situation, and instead of, the society valuing life and thinking about how, as a community, through charity, how do we solve these problems? How do we make sure that baby is cared for in the best possible way? It ain't the government. The government has a bad track record, people. Like, governments around the world killed 200 million people of their own people, not just separately, of their own. When you ratchet that up to war on top of it, you're talking about a grinding meat machine. That's what government is. Government must steal and take by force life, liberty, and property to exist. Now, why on earth would we ever trust them with the lives of babies? Why would we ever trust that they're going to make a life decision when their decisions throughout history are replete with death and slaughter? I don't know, man. I don't think it's that. I don't think the government can ever be the solution in this case. I think it's got to be culture. I think it's got to be charity. And I think that these young, very scared women and young men who get pregnant should have other means other than first and foremost, being scared, being driven to some god awful government funded, abortion clinic like that. I think that the market can provide something far better. And I'll tell you right now, what one of the major damn problems is government in the realm of adoption as well. How expensive and how hard they have made it for good families to adopt kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I know oh boy, should we do this one too? Adoption while we're at it? Because
I mean, that's not a very complicated one.
oh boy.
I mean, no.
The state complicates it.
So you can go into any issue and
Sure.
dissect it, and you can, but like just as liberty is, it's pretty simple.
It is, and that's the thing is, it's definitely not a national. It's not a federal. Per the Constitution, this is not a federal one. This is not one that we.
Besides per the Constitution, the connection to naturalization.
Yeah. Okay. What was it? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. The idea though is decentralization. Get the feds out of it. Start working at it at your local and state level.
Well, as much as it might seem weird to talk about like the adoption of babies in terms of contracts, it's a contractual issue.
Sure.
That's all there is.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you're responsible for raising a child to the best of your ability. Now, this might be a juicy part here in terms of people who are not like you, maybe adopting people, right?
Again, it's a contractual issue between different parties, and they get to decide.
I will contend, first and foremost, that a child who is loved is going to have a much better life experience in terms of coming to education, in terms of coming to understanding of culture, in terms of being able to reciprocate love in the future, and therefore being a benefit to their community. I don't care if they're loved by white, black, straight, gay, Christian, Islam, I don't care. People need to be loved when they're kids, growing up, especially from the ages of 0 to 8. They need to be instilled with the idea that although we do not agree with everybody, we still need to respect their humanity. And I think that the government getting in the way of that and making it god-awful expensive and putting forth, subsidies for people who probably shouldn't be raising kids, right? Like sending false market signals out there who survive off of subsidies because they are an adoption home and that's it. They don't do anything else in terms of, giving back to society. I think those kind of things where it's left in government hands and perverted in government hands is one of the reasons why abortion has flourished in this nation. You got to get the government out of the solutions, or else you can continue to compound and have worse problems.
I agree. So I've got one more abortion question.
All right.
It has to do with the U.S. Senate. There was recently a bill in the U.S. Senate.
Sure.
And there were two bills. One bill to outlaw late-term abortions, but that one is not the one I want to focus on. I want to focus on the one called the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. It would have required, where's the wording there? Basically, it would require medical attention if an abortion was being performed, but the baby survived the abortion.
Oh, Jesus.
And so it failed to pass.
So we're not offering help to babies who survive abortions.
We're not requiring that.
So we're not.
I'm pretty sure that if a doctor today lets somebody die on a table when he could have done something, he or she could have done something, I'm pretty sure that's like negligent.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm pretty sure that at the very least it's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, if Shane starts bleeding profusely, I'm going to like take off my belt and try to save. He'll probably still die, unfortunately, because I don't know what I'm doing. But I'll try to save you.
You don't know how to do a tourniquet, man.
I can do a tourniquet, but I can't do the rest.
We need to have a prac study here.
But so how would you have voted?
Without seeing the bill, man.
Well, the bill just says you have to be required to provide medical care to try to save a baby who has.
I'm all for saving babies, man. Yeah, listen. If a bill comes before me where I get to help more babies not die, man, I'm doing it. I'm gonna vote for it. That's, I mean, as much as I don't want the damn state in any of this kind of stuff, and I think the solution is outside of the state, if I can make sure that babies aren't being slaughtered or left to die, man, yeah, I'm voting for it.
Cool.
Now, I don't want to ever, ever, ever throw one of these hapless, young, silly, young girls that makes a mistake into a cage. I don't. That's not where I'm at, man. It's just the whole, and that's why I hate this subject. I hate that our culture hasn't figured this one out yet, man. I hate, like, to be in a position where somehow this is political. What a weird thing. I mean, as a culture, we should. It's 2020. We should be way past this. We should just recognize life is life, for God's sakes, and as a culture, we should have come up with some solutions outside of the government.
Well, I think there are people fighting for solutions.
I'm not saying that everybody.
No, I know. I just not enough, and the government like takes a bunch of the oxygen out of the room, unfortunately.
Sure.
But there are people. We should have somebody. We should have somebody who's a proponent of abortion, maybe like a Planned Parenthood supporter. We should have somebody who's against abortion. We should have somebody from maybe like who volunteers or runs like a pregnancy resource clinic.
I'll tell you what though, if you're going to come on and do that, I hope you're consistent, because I'll tell you right now, I don't like war because it kills people. I don't like the death penalty because it kills people. And I'd say I need to define this more. Government kills people in war. Government kills people through the death penalty. And government kills people through abortion. I don't like any of those things. I don't like government having the authority to kill people. Right? I don't like that authority. Now,
I think those are only three. There's so many more, man.
Oh, I know.
Healthcare regulation kills people. Economic regulation kills people. The government indoctrination system kills people.
Yeah, sanctions. What you name it, whatever.
Well, sanctions is war. I almost said sanctions like that's also war.
There's an underlying theme here. Is government kills people. Now, I'm not saying liberty is going to be neat and clean and everything else, but I'll tell you right now, dangerous liberty is still far safer than limited government.
You know what would be weirdly funny is you should find somebody who looks a lot like you. Could your brother. He should run for U.S. Senate too. Except he should run under a character, and the character should be like this government guy. His tagline should be "Government kills people."
Oh, that'd be great.
And just like the whole thing's kind of a theater.
Hey Brett, if you want to be my oppositional bad guy just for fun.
I don't know. He's the original Ron Paul guy, so maybe
he is. Yeah.
You should be the bad guy.
Maybe. No, I'm trying to get elected. But bad guys get elected, or maybe we're going about this all wrong. I don't know, Banksy. We are coming up on time here.
Already?
Yeah, boy.
Wow.
Yeah, we crushed it.
If you enjoyed this, you can check out more about Shane Hazel at shanehazel.com. He is running for U.S. Senate. He accepts offers of volunteerism in helping the campaign, donations, and he's on all the platforms, Twitter and Facebook, Shane T. Hazel on Twitter, and Facebook on Shane Hazel.
Go check out F Banks Wise too on Twitter.
Why F Banks Wise?
F Banks
That's so
Wise?
sad. Why?
Fernando. Oh, it's such a fun name to say. It reminds me of Christmas when Buddy the Elf is like, what, does he say Fernando? What is the...
I've never seen that movie.
What? Boy, you need to go home and watch Elf.
If you are on my social media, I have been sharing stuff about Shane, but also about my buddy Matt. He's the other candidate that I think is
Liberty candidate.
Worth your time.
Yeah.
Wherever you live. I don't care if you live in Japan.
That's right.
Or China. Just be
Wherever.
careful if you're in China.
Yeah, if you're an American citizen.
No coronavirus over here.
Yeah, that's right.
But check him out. He also needs volunteers and donors. And if you like us, because we've got like the information about the best candidates in Georgia.
That's right.
And you like what we put out there. You get value from our commentary and stupid jokes. And you like stickers, you can become a patron at patreon.com/rebellionpod. You can join for as low as $3 a month. And that comes with some cool bonuses.
Yeah.
Number one being our love and appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go out to info@rebellionpod.com if you want to become an advertiser or send us some type of information you want us to share on the show. Go out there, leave us a 5-star review. We'll read them here on the air, and we love them. It helps push us to the top of the algorithms. Outside of all of that, Banksy,
we have 3 guests that are going to be coming on at some point.
Oh, man.
We've got Maj Touré, who we were supposed to do this weekend, but has been postponed a little bit. We have a writer from ammo.com. who contacted us out of the blue.
Yeah.
And they have a pretty cool business model, ammo.com. You can think about what that means. And then at some point, we might have a libertarian candidate for president on who has created a lot of stir and some disharmony.
Yeah, maybe a couple of them actually, because Mr. John Mons is also looking forward to coming on the show.
I missed that one.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited, but it's going to have to wait till next time. Ladies and gents, we hope you have a beautiful Friday, or whenever you're listening to this, go out there, like and subscribe to everything, especially the guys on YouTube. We love you. We need you.
Peace. That one went fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Homie. Well, I almost said homo.
All right, homo.